Ever get that feeling? You know, you see someone you want to talk to, but actually, like, going over and saying hi just makes you want to, like, disappear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Totally. Well, that's approach anxiety.
it really is.
And a lot of people feel it.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone.
So today we're going to dive into this.
Mhm.
We're going to be looking at a conversation with a dating coach named Brad P.
Okay.
And he not only got over his own approach anxiety,
Right.
but now he, like, helps other people do it.
That's awesome.
So we're going to break down his insights
Okay.
and try to pull out actionable advice that we can use.
Cool.
So what I thought was really interesting is that he approaches this from a slightly different angle.
Yeah, how so?
Well, he talks about it wasn't actually the fear of being told no
Oh,
that held him back the most.
right.
It was the worry that he would carry that negativity with him afterward.
That's really interesting, yeah.
It's almost like he was more afraid of the emotional baggage than the actual rejection itself.
Exactly. And I think that's such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Because it moves the focus away from the external event and toward our internal experience.
Right.
You know, it's about understanding the stories that we tell ourselves about those events and how those stories can really shape our reality.
So how do we start to, like, unravel those stories and rewrite them in a way that makes us feel empowered?
Well, you know, Brad P. talks about the importance of recognizing those
Right.
stories for what they are. Just isolated events
Yeah.
that don't define who we are as people.
Right.
And he tells this pretty amusing anecdote
Yeah.
about jumping out of a moving car when he was a teenager.
Oh, my God.
Clearly an embarrassing moment,
I would think so.
but for years afterward,
Mm-hmm.
he would replay it in his head over and over again,
Yeah.
and he let it fuel this negative self-perception.
Oh, I totally get that. I think we all have those jumping out of the moving car moments.
do.
Those cringeworthy things we play in our heads over and over.
Absolutely.
But how do we stop them from, like, holding us back?
So his strategy was surprisingly simple.
Okay.
He started sharing those stories with others,
Wow.
letting people laugh along with him.
Interesting.
It seems kind of counterintuitive at first.
Yeah.
But he said that by, like, exposing those stories to the light of day,
Yeah.
he was able to release the negative charge that they held over him.
It's like taking the air out of a balloon or something. Like,
Totally.
you know, that big scary thing just kind of becomes a lot less intimidating.
It really does. And it connects back to that idea of separating who we are
Right.
from the events that happen to us.
Yeah.
You know, we are not our embarrassing moments.
Right.
We are not our rejections.
Okay.
They're simply experiences that we've had.
So once we start to kind of loosen the grip of those negative stories, how do we actually start building the courage to approach someone new?
Well, Brad P. suggests thinking of it like a social anxiety scale.
Okay.
Imagine like a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is something that barely triggers any anxiety,
Okay.
like asking someone for the time,
Mm-hmm.
and 10 is something absolutely terrifying,
Yeah.
like he puts it moonwalking in a bookstore.
I love that visual. I can't even imagine
It's hilarious.
trying to moonwalk in a bookstore.
But the point is to identify
Okay.
those 1s and 2s on your own personal anxiety scale,
Mm-hmm.
those small acts of social courage that feel achievable for you right now.
Right.
So maybe it's simply smiling at someone you pass on the street,
Right.
or complimenting a stranger's outfit.
Yeah. So it's about finding those baby steps,
Exactly.
those small wins that kind of help us build momentum.
Right. And as you gain confidence
Yeah.
with those 1s and 2s, you can gradually work your way up the scale.
So if asking for the time is a 1, what might be like a 3 or a 4?
That's where it gets personal.
Yeah.
What feels challenging but not overwhelming for you.
Right.
It could be striking up a conversation with the barista at your local coffee shop,
Yeah.
or maybe asking a coworker about their weekend plans.
I like that it's about personalizing the approach and finding those challenges that are just outside of our comfort zone,
Exactly.
but not too far.
Right.
And as you kind of successfully navigate those challenges,
Yeah.
you start to build a muscle memory for courage.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. Approaching someone you're attracted to can feel like a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. It is different.
The stakes feel higher.
They do.
And that can really amplify that fear of rejection.
Yeah. And that's where Brad P. introduces this idea of using bold openers
Okay.
to quickly gauge compatibility and avoid wasting time.
Yeah.
He believes that by being upfront about what you're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
you can save yourself a lot of heartache down the line.
I remember one example he gave was,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how I feel about this one, but
Okay.
did we have sex last week?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to admit that made me raise an eyebrow.
It's certainly a bold approach.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be for everyone.
Right.
But his logic is interesting.
Okay.
He argues that it's a way to value your time
Okay.
and seek genuine connection.
Right.
It's about weeding out the people who just aren't on the same page.
So it's about being assertive and clear about your intentions.
Exactly.
Now, whether or not that particular opener is for you, I think it highlights the importance of being authentic and putting yourself out there.
It does.
And it seems like finding that balance between boldness and sensitivity is key.
It is.
You want to be confident and assertive
without
being disrespectful or coming across as inauthentic.
Absolutely. And that's where the real heart of Brad P's message comes in.
Okay.
He emphasizes over and over that it's not about using tricks or manipulation to get the girl or get the guy.
Right.
It's about developing the courage to be your authentic self and pursue what you truly want.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes his approach so fascinating. It's about so much more than just like picking up dates.
Yeah.
It's about personal growth, self-discovery, and living a life that is true to yourself.
I love that. But all this being said, I'm curious about how Brad P. himself deals with those moments when the anxiety creeps back in.
Well, that's a great question.
Even as a dating coach, who teaches this stuff for a living.
Right.
Does he still experience approach anxiety?
That is a great question, and it's one we'll explore in part 2.
Okay.
We'll delve into the specific strategies that he uses to navigate those moments.
Right.
And how he reframes them, not as failures, but as opportunities to practice his courage.
Okay, that's definitely something I want to hear more about. So stay tuned, and we'll be back with part 2.
We'll be back
to discuss those strategies in more detail.
All right, welcome back.
So before we were talking about how even Brad P., a dating coach who teaches this stuff for a living, still has those moments where approach anxiety just kind of pops back up.
Yeah, it's a good reminder.
Yeah.
That this is a process, not a destination.
Right.
We're all constantly evolving and growing. And there are always going to be new challenges that push us outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost comforting to know. That even someone who teaches this stuff for a living still has those moments. Makes it feel a lot less intimidating for the rest of us.
For sure, it normalizes the experience.
Yeah.
And it shows us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's about learning to act in spite of it.
So how does he handle those situations when the anxiety starts to creep back in?
Well, he's developed a set of mental tools and strategies that help him shift his perspective.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about his fear of carrying around that negativity after a rejection?
Right. It was almost as if he was more afraid of the emotional residue than the actual rejection itself.
Exactly. And he found a really interesting way to address that fear.
Okay.
He started telling those embarrassing stories to others.
So instead of hiding those cringe-worthy moments, he actually shared them with people.
He'd recount those awkward encounters and let people laugh along with him.
I mean, that sounds incredibly counterintuitive. Why would he do that?
Because he realized that by keeping those stories bottled up, they were festering and growing in his mind.
Right.
But by sharing them, he was able to expose them to the light of day.
Yeah.
And in doing so, they lost their power over him.
That's a great analogy. It's like, shining a light on a monster hiding under the bed.
Exactly.
Suddenly it's not so scary anymore.
Right, and it circles back to that idea of separating ourselves from the events that happen to us.
Right.
We are not our embarrassing moments.
Right.
We are not our rejections. They're simply experiences that we've had.
So if sharing our embarrassing stories can help us detach from those negative emotions, what about the actual fear of approaching someone new, especially someone we're attracted to?
Well, in those situations, Brad P. emphasizes the importance of understanding the root of your anxiety. So what specifically triggers those feelings for you? Is it the fear of rejection itself?
Right.
The anticipation of awkwardness? Or something else entirely?
That's a good point. Everyone's triggers are different.
Right.
So it's important to understand what sets you off.
Exactly. Once you've pinpointed those triggers, you can start to develop personalized strategies for addressing them.
Can you give us some examples of those strategies?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Brad P. talks about the benefits of practicing affirmations.
Okay.
For example, if your fear is rooted in a belief that you're not good enough, you might repeat affirmations like, I am worthy of love and connection. Or, I am confident and capable.
Affirmations can be really helpful for shifting those negative thought patterns.
For sure. He also recommends mindfulness exercises
to
help manage the physical symptoms of anxiety like a racing heart or sweaty palms.
Yeah.
Practices like deep breathing or meditation can help calm the nervous system
Okay.
and bring you back to the present moment.
It's amazing how powerful those simple techniques can be.
And of course, one of the most effective ways to overcome any fear is to gradually expose yourself to it.
So in this case, that would mean putting yourself in situations where you have to approach new people.
Exactly. But Brad P. emphasizes that it's about taking small, manageable steps.
Right.
You start with those ones and twos on your social anxiety scale.
Okay.
Maybe it's saying hello to someone in your building or asking a stranger for directions.
So even those seemingly insignificant interactions can help build our courage muscle.
Absolutely. And as you experience success with those smaller interactions, you'll naturally start to feel more confident in tackling those bigger challenges, like approaching someone you're attracted to.
I love the idea of framing it as a courage muscle.
Yeah.
It makes it feel like something that we can actively develop and strengthen over time.
Exactly. It's a process, and it's one that requires patience and persistence. Brad P. even admits that he still experiences moments of social anxiety, even after all these years of teaching and coaching others. He describes it as a wave that keeps trying to pop back up, even after you think you've ridden it out.
So it's an ongoing practice of building resilience.
Yeah.
And learning to manage those waves of anxiety as they come.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all human and we all experience fear and self-doubt from time to time.
Yeah.
The key is not to let those feelings paralyze us.
So how do we prevent those feelings from derailing our progress?
Brad P. suggests reframing those moments not as failures, but as opportunities to learn and grow.
Okay, so instead of beating ourselves up for feeling anxious,
Yeah.
we can use those experiences as valuable feedback.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience?
Right.
What strategies can I implement next time to navigate the situation more effectively?
I like that it takes the pressure off of being perfect.
Yeah.
And allows us to embrace the learning process.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not a linear journey.
Right.
There will be ups and downs, moments of confidence, and moments of doubt.
Yeah.
The key is to keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time.
Speaking of moving forward, Brad P. also makes an interesting point about the connection between approach anxiety and escalation.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, he's observed that if you're struggling to approach someone in the first place, those feelings of anxiety can carry over into other aspects of the interaction.
Right.
It can make it harder to be confident, assertive, and engaging.
That makes sense if you're already feeling anxious about the initial approach.
Yeah.
It's going to be even harder to relax and be yourself once the conversation is going.
Exactly. And that's why he emphasizes the importance of addressing the root cause of the anxiety, not just masking the symptoms. It's about building a solid foundation of courage and confidence
Right.
that can support you throughout the entire interaction.
So how do we actually build that foundation? I mean, we've talked about affirmations, mindfulness, and gradual exposure, but are there other strategies we can implement?
Well, one of the most practical pieces of advice that Brad P. offers is to start with a realistic assessment of your current level of social anxiety.
Right.
So you use that social anxiety scale we talked about earlier and identify those ones and twos that feel achievable for you right now.
It's about setting ourselves up for success by starting with challenges that feel manageable.
Exactly. And he even suggests practicing those small acts of courage outside of romantic contexts.
Okay.
Maybe it's striking up a conversation with a stranger at the grocery store or asking a coworker for their opinion on something.
So it's about building that courage muscle in everyday situations so that it becomes more natural and less daunting.
Exactly. And remember, the goal isn't to become some sort of social butterfly overnight.
Right.
It's about making incremental progress and celebrating those small wins along the way.
Small wins lead to big victories, right?
They do. And one of the most important things to remember throughout this entire process is that it's okay to feel those fears.
It's human.
Yeah, we're not robots.
We're not.
It's perfectly normal to feel anxious or nervous in new social situations.
The key is to not let those feelings control us.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging them, understanding them, and developing the tools to move forward in spite of them.
So we've talked a lot about managing our internal experience. But what about the external aspects of approaching someone?
Yeah.
Are there any specific techniques or strategies that he recommends?
He encourages people to experiment with different openers and routines to see what feels authentic and natural for them. You know, he emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to social interaction.
So it's about finding what works for you.
Exactly.
and developing a style that reflects your unique personality.
Right. And it's important to remember that the goal isn't to manipulate or trick people into liking you.
Right.
It's about presenting your authentic self and allowing others to connect with you on a genuine level.
Authenticity is always key. Always. And this brings us back to the core message of this entire deep dive.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating courage, confidence, and authenticity in every area of your life.
And that's what we'll be exploring in part 3.
Exactly.
We'll delve into how these principles can be applied not just to dating,
Right.
but to any area of life where you want to overcome fear and pursue your goals.
It's about recognizing that the skills you develop in one area can be transferred and applied to countless others.
Okay, I'm really excited to discuss that.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, and we'll be back with part 3 to unpack those connections in more detail. Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive on conquering approach anxiety.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have.
From understanding where our fears come from
Right.
to developing actual strategies for building courage and confidence.
And I think what's so cool is that all these principles,
Yeah.
they extend way beyond just dating.
Yeah.
They could be applied to any area of life
Right.
where we're facing fear or hesitation.
That's what I really like about Brad P's approach.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning how to pick up dates.
Right.
It's about developing a mindset
Yeah.
that gives us the power to pursue anything we really want.
Yeah, he has this phrase, your life is your mission.
I love that.
It's about recognizing we all have a unique path to follow.
Yeah.
And it takes courage to step onto that path fully.
It's such a powerful reminder that we're not just here to passively exist.
Right.
We're here to create, to explore,
Totally.
to experience all that life has to offer.
Yeah, and that often requires us to step outside of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
To challenge those limiting beliefs
Right.
that hold us back.
So how can we translate these strategies that we've been talking about into other parts of our lives? Like, for example, what if someone is terrified of public speaking?
Well, a lot of the same principles apply.
Okay.
First, you got to understand the root of the fear.
Yeah.
Is it a fear of judgment? Fear of making a mistake?
Right.
Once you know the specific trigger, then you can start to address it.
So if someone is afraid of being judged,
Yeah.
they might use affirmations to reinforce their self-worth
Right.
and remind themselves that they're capable and valuable regardless of what other people think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they might also benefit from gradually exposing themselves to public speaking opportunities,
Okay.
starting by speaking up in small groups or joining a Toastmasters club to practice their skills in a safe and supportive environment.
It's about taking those baby steps
Yeah.
to build confidence and momentum.
For sure. And as they experience success with those smaller challenges,
Yeah.
their fear will naturally start to decrease.
It's amazing how the same principles can apply to so many different parts of life.
It really is.
What about something like asking for a raise? I mean, that can be a really scary conversation for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it often comes down to fear.
Right.
Fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, fear of not being worthy.
So how would you approach that situation using Brad P's framework?
Well, first, I'd encourage them to do their research
Okay.
and come prepared with a clear understanding of their market value and their contributions to the company.
So it's about building a strong case for yourself.
Yeah.
And feeling good about what you're worth.
Exactly. And then it's about practicing the conversation beforehand.
Yeah.
Maybe even role-playing it with a friend or mentor.
I love that tip.
Yeah.
It can really help to work through those feelings of anxiety and build confidence before the actual conversation.
And remember, it's okay to feel nervous.
Yeah.
It's normal. It's a natural response to a potentially stressful situation.
Yeah.
But the point is, don't let that nervousness control you.
Right. Use those mindfulness techniques that we were talking about earlier to calm your nervous system and bring yourself back to the present moment.
And even if the outcome isn't what you hoped for,
Right.
it's still a valuable learning experience. You can think about what went well, what could have been improved,
Yeah.
and use that feedback to grow for next time.
It's all about embracing that growth mindset and seeing challenges as opportunities for getting better.
Absolutely. And that's what's so empowering about this approach.
Right.
It's not about avoiding fear or pretending it doesn't exist.
Right.
It's about developing tools and the resilience
Yeah.
to move through it and come out stronger.
It's about reclaiming our power
Yeah,
and creating the lives we want.
absolutely. And remember, you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
There are tons of resources, communities, and mentors out there who can help you on your journey.
Speaking of mentors, Brad P. actually offers coaching and programs
He does.
that are designed to help people overcome these challenges and create lasting transformation.
Right.
So if you're feeling inspired to dig deeper into his work,
Yeah.
we'll be sure to include links to his website and other resources in the show notes.
For sure. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
We all have those moments of self-doubt.
Yeah.
Those times when fear threatens to hold us back. But if even a dating coach who helps people conquer their fears still feels that way,
Right.
it means none of us are immune.
Right. The key is not to let those feelings define us. It's
Yeah.
about building that awareness, getting the tools and the resilience to navigate them and keep moving forward toward the life we want.
Exactly. And remember,
Yeah.
every step you take outside of your comfort zone, no matter how small,
Yeah.
is a victory.
Yeah.
It's worth celebrating.
I like that.
You are braver than you think, and you have the power to create a life filled with courage, connection, and true self-expression.
That's a beautiful way to end this episode.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive
It was my pleasure.
into conquering approach anxiety.
Yeah.
Hopefully you picked up some valuable insights and tools that you can apply to your own life. Remember, your life is your mission.
It is.
So go out there and make it extraordinary.
Yes.